Good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim as we continue reading Flying Against Time with Chapter 10. "Well, what do you think of her?" asked Ted Scott as he and Bill Tremblay descended from the plane after their spin through the air. "She's a peach," declared Bill enthusiastically. "And my, how she can whiz along! I've done some tall traveling in my day, but never anything like that. If I hadn't had my helmet on, I think my hair would have blown off." "No wonder," laughed Ted. "What would you say if I told you that at one time we reached a speed of 210 miles an hour? "Honest Injun?" asked Bill incredulously. "Cross my heart and hope to die," assured Ted proudly. "Then you've got that race as good as won," already declared Bill with conviction. "If the weatherman is good to me," modified Bill, "and if nothing unforeseen develops in the working of the plane, but I can't expect the weather to be made to order. If I have to buck against heavy winds, it will be a different story. And you know what the Rockies are. I may find myself in a blinding blizzard, or I may hit an air pocket going over those gorges." "Oh, a dozen things may happen," conceded Bill. "The Rockies are bad medicine, but I'll bet my boots you'll make it." "First you bet your shirt, now your boots?" laughed Bill. "I'd hate like thunder to strip you that way, Bill. I've simply got to win now." "A pretty tough job," commented Bill. "When the present record was made, there were two fellows in the plane. They could take spells at relieving one another. Moreover, if anything went wrong, one could do the tinkering while the other one stuck fast to the controls. They had the advantage over you in every way. Suppose, for instance, anything went wrong with a wing and you had to crawl out there to repair it. You'd have to leave the control. And if the plane should start to make a nosedive, what would happen?" "I'd be out of luck, unless I scrambled back quickly enough to stop it," was the reply. "You'd have it a mighty sight easier if you was flying from west to east instead of from east to west," remarked Bill. "On account of the winds, you mean? Yes, that would be a cinch. But you'll notice that the wind is almost always blowing from the west to the east. I'd have a tailwind practically all the way. As it is, going from east to west, I'll be bucking a headwind most of the way. You can see how it is by the records of the New York to Chicago airmail. The average flying speed between those cities is 86 miles an hour from New York to Chicago, while from Chicago to New York it's 100 miles an hour. "A difference of 14 miles an hour," commented Bill. "That would count some when multiplied by 20 hours. "You bet your sweet life it would," agreed Ted. "There's another thing. With a high wind against me, I'll have to hug the earth. The higher I go, the stiffer the wind will be against me. Yet I'd be safer if I were higher, especially when I come to the mountains. So there you are. If I stay high, I'm safer, but I'm slower. If I go low, I'm faster, but it's more dangerous." "It does seem as though everything's against you," replied Bill. "You'll need all your luck to carry you through. If a rabbit's foot would help, you're welcome to mine. It was caught by a cross-eyed fella at midnight in a graveyard in the dark of the moon and—" "That's enough," interrupted Ted with a laugh. "I wouldn't rob you of such a cherished memento. But now come home with me and have supper. The folks will be glad to see you. Charity especially. She thinks you're an angel since I told her of the way you rescued me from drowning when we were up in Canada." Charity Browning, as well as Eben, did indeed welcome Bill Tremblay with profusion, and set before him a dinner fit for a king. Any friend of Ted's was a friend of theirs, but Bill, for the reason that Ted had mentioned, received an especially cordial greeting. "Ever since you pulled my dear boy out of the water, I've prayed to the Lord every night to bless you," said good old Charity. "Well, that's awfully kind of you," said Bill. "Did Ted ever tell you how he rescued me from burning to death when my plane caught fire in midair?" "Land sakes!" ejaculated Charity. "No, he never told me anything about that." "He wouldn't," replied Bill. "That boy's as dumb as an oyster in telling of hair-raising things he's done. He's all for telling what the other folks have done." "I know," said Charity, patting Ted's shoulder proudly. "I have the hardest work to drag anything out of him. Half of what I know about him I get from the papers." Bill left on the following morning, and Ted plunged with redoubled zeal into his preparations for the contest. The time was coming soon for him to be on his way to Boston, and every day had its own task to be done. Several days after Bill's departure, Ted was called to the telephone. "Long distance from Washington," announced the operator. Ted waited a minute until the call came over the wire. "Hello, is this Ted Scott?" "Yes," replied Ted. "This is Tom Ralston," came the voice. "How are you, old man?" "Tom Ralston?" said Ted with delight. "Why, it's a dog's age since I've heard from you. Didn't recognize your voice." "I'm all stopped up with a cold, and the connection isn't very good," was the reply. "Listen, Ted, I'm on my way west and thought we might get together for a chin-fest." "Nothing would suit me better," replied Ted heartily. "Come a-runnin', and fix it up so that you can stay with me for a few days." "Can't do that," replied the voice, "but I'm passing through Walsingham on a branch line. Train stops there 20 minutes for supper. That isn't very far from Bromville, is it?" "It's only 15 minutes," replied Ted. "I could make it in my car in a few minutes." "That's what I thought," was the reply. "My train goes through Walsingham about 7:30 tomorrow night. If you could be there, we could have a little chat. It isn't long, but a whole lot can be said in 20 minutes. There was a warm feeling in Ted's heart as he hung up. Tom Ralston was one of his dearest friends. They had worked together in the Mississippi flood district, and the friendship there begun had been more strongly cemented as time went on. Good old Tom. It would be great to see him again. Ted got his own supper a little earlier than usual the next night, stepped into his smart little roadster, and sped over to the town of Walsingham. It was not a much-traveled road, and he let the car to its limit, that in less than 20 minutes he had drawn up beside the station platform. Promptly on time, the long train drew in. There was a hurried outpouring of passengers for supper. Ted stood at the entrance of the station restaurant, eagerly scanning every face. No Tom appeared. "That's queer," he muttered, with a pang of disappointment at his heart. Could he have missed the train? The telegraph operator came out of the office. "Ah, there you are, Mr. Scott," he said. "I have a telegram for you." "Thank you," Ted said as he took the yellow envelope. He tore it open and read, "Unavoidably detained. Stepped off the train some stations back to get a paper and was too late getting back. Sorry. Will write. Tom." "Too bad," muttered Ted in vexation. "I wouldn't have missed seeing the old boy for a farm." There was no help for it, however, and he stepped into his car and started for home. He had traversed perhaps a third of the distance when, as he was passing a lonely spot, his ears were assailed by a piercing shriek. "Help!" came the woman's voice. "Help! Murder! Help!" And that's the end of chapter 10. We'll have to wait till next week to find out what all that screaming was about. So until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.